Dr. Mohammed, do you think we're better off 3 years down the line?
Certainly not. The reality in government and in policy making, whether in the economy, security, military, when you come into government, you inherit the assets and liabilities, and you cannot pretend to pick and choose what you will want to address. It is given to you, it's handed over to you, so it's a given. When this government came into power, it was obvious that the economy was in bad shape. Part of it had to do with forces beyond us, beyond our borders, that had to do with the running of the international economy, the capitalist system itself, and there was nothing anybody could do. But having admitted that, we also have to admit that the policy terrain, the economic management concepts and policies and the drivers were not properly handled. So whoever was coming into government in 2015, even if the government of 2015 had continued, it would have had to face the problems this government had to face. But having said so, however, I believe certain choices were made, they were deliberate choices. Those choices not only aggravated the recession, even if it was inevitable, it aggravated the recession and in fact turned the management of the national economy into a joke. Every Tom, Dick and Harry can be posted anywhere. I believe in management in general and economic management in particular, you have to pick the right people in the right places. And when you mix yourself up by saying that anybody who shares the same genes with you, who's your relation, can be posted into any ministry or any crony of yours, or every Tom, Dick and Harry can be given every single appointment simply because he is a personal friend, he is a crony, then we are in very serious trouble.
Is that what's happening?
It was what happened.
I'm a little worried. I mean, when you talk about are we better, and you say we're not better off. Yes, there might be some areas that people might argue that we haven't made much improvement, or maybe we've even made, we've gone on reverse. But would you look at all the sectors and say we haven't made progress anywhere in 3 years?
If I had the discussion taking place now correctly, I thought economics was introduced. And, one of...
He also talked about security.
No, hold
briefly.
on. Let's talk about economy, because the two or the three are intertwined. You cannot talk about national economic policy without looking at what impacts it had on the nation, on unemployment generation, on the number of people in job or out of job or in transition from one job to another job. It is very important for us to realize that. Secondly, nobody that I know of any consequence, can attempt to delineate economics from politics. It started from Lenin saying that it is simply incredible.
Yeah, but even focusing on the economy, some people will argue that, farmers found it better. So, I mean, I remember speaking with the Minister for Agriculture, Audu Obi, and he said that, yes, everybody's talking about a recession, but farmers are not in recession.
I don't
Did you have that experience?
I think my friend Audu Obi was being economical with the truth. First and foremost, I come from one of the most important farming areas of Nigeria, Kano State. And I can tell you, the farming situation from 2015 to date, that is those who invest in farming in terms of money, in terms of input, in terms of quite a number of things which make farming profitable, I will not tell you that things are easy. They are not easy. Now, I was in an interview here in Abuja when somebody asked me, what progress has been made and that how much the government has done. I said, well, I measure progress by concrete terms. If I buy a fertilizer and I'm a farmer, and the prices of fertilizer have shot up from the time this government came, and it's still going up, and other inputs, whether you're talking about herbicides or you're talking of other inputs, and labor itself on the farms is not necessarily either improving in terms of productivity of the labor. And you can also say that the people who are farm hands in our farms are not necessarily better off. You cannot tell me that we are doing better off. Propaganda is no choice, is no substitute for concrete, achievable policy objectives. And I haven't seen any evidence to tell me that we have done well in farming policies. That is one. Secondly, Ours is a capitalist society, whereby it's dog eat dog, right? As far as I'm concerned, if we want to encourage farming, we have to do it through a mix of policies: commercial farming, subsistence farming, and quite a lot of other things. And if we do so sincerely by telling the people what we're about to do. We are not saying the government has a bullet, a silver bullet, which it can shoot and everything will turn all right. And besides, a lot of bad policies have gone before, and they are not likely to go overnight because we are not here. Government is no miracle. It is doing the diligent thing that has to be done so that at least some people can be better off. I have not seen that evidence in particular in economic policy, and I'm not impressed by the kind of characters who are running our economic policy.
Can I respond to two issues? Because I have to respond from left to right today. Now, Madam Obi, with great respect, said something about averting recession. That I think we should interrogate ourselves more on that issue, because we can't make blank statements without providing details. Because when you say we could have averted recession, then we must go into details of how those countries who averted recession managed to avert recession, did it, how we even did it in the past in Nigeria, because we have slipped into recession in the past before in Nigeria. What happened? How did we do it? And what we could have done now to avert recession, or what could have done better than what the government did. Don't forget that in 2008, Nigeria oil prices crashed. We were almost slipped into recession. But how did we avert it? Everybody knows that we had a strong, a foreign reserve. And it was because of that we were able to cushion the effect on the microeconomics, indices at that time. We were able to cushion the effect. And so
prices... How did you have strong foreign reserves?
Because at that time, when Obasanjo left, he left very good foreign reserves. And so we're able to draw...
We're talking about this government.
No, I'm talking of what happened before in 2008. Compared to what happened now. But what happened now? Why were we not able to, to avert recession? Because at that point, our foreign reserves were depleted. At the point this government, you know that it was depleted to almost about $29 billion from about $47 billion that they met. But when in 2008, we averted it because we had enough to fall back on. But we didn't have enough this time to fall back on. So those countries are also averted, even Saudi Arabia, all those countries. Venezuela slipped into recession, and so many countries that depend so much on oil. So it is not true that most countries averted it. Most countries that depend on oil could not avert recession at the time global prices crashed. I want to also respect.
I think she
I need to respond
so
to him.
Before your second part of the response.
Respond, yes.
So if she can just quickly respond to that, but don't lose your train of thought on him. We'll come back to you.
I think the lawyer Keyamo is speaking within the context of his understanding. The most important thing that usually happens is a combination effect. So the point on having reserves to be able to cushion the effect is there. But a most important thing is policy direction. When your policy direction in a time of recession contradicts the incentives necessary for you to have the supply side on exchange rate, on foreign currency for your confidence boosting signal to the market, you're going to run into problem. It's not surprising. He's using an example of Venezuela. Venezuela is the worst example to use in comparing what happened with us, because Venezuela is a classic case of failed economic policy that drove it down the lowest rung. I think that...
what country would we use? I mean, in comparison of... that you say would compare favorably with Nigeria?
You had, even if you talked about countries in Africa, you had Algeria. You also would talk about even what Angola tried to do. When you look at what other countries like Russia and the rest of them tried to do, it was basically to keep a consistency in the signal that they were sending to the market. I think one of the other things that Mr. Keyamo has not taken into consideration is that when you know that you are in the region of possible recession, you understand what timely decision-making is all about. Economics is about confidence, market confidence, investor confidence, consumer confidence. That's what we use. And it is based on the kind of actions that a government is taking. This was a country where the government knew it was in a parlous state. It was taking over an economy in that state. And it felt that it could just relax until the problem showed up. That was a singular wrong move on the part of this administration.
You said something about consistency of policy. You're saying policy wasn't consistent? I mean, we've had let me just use a simple one here. Interest rates have remained constant for all this while. That's not an indication that could have helped in any way?
No, you see, all of those price variables are interconnected, but they drive, some of the things that drive them are dependent on how you're looking at your monetary policy against your fiscal policies. And what had happened was that when the recession was beginning to look like it was going to come on us, the policy direction of the administration was totally confusing to the world. Boardrooms around the world have options. They are not looking to Nigeria as though Nigeria were the only game in town. And so if boardrooms were looking at Nigeria and our economic policy lacked clarity, and our economic policy was also a detour from that period that you spoke about. In the previous time when we had the oil price shock, and actually it was also really a financial crisis period. When we had that situation, because the central bank and the fiscal side managed things in a way that said no cause for alarm, the boardrooms took a cue from it.
Okay.